You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. In these, to say the least, troubling times, today we start out with the healing voice of a poet, indeed a former American poet laureate. Next, we speak with a woman who has created a way to turn the Internet, which is so often an unwelcoming, hostile place for women, into a tool of empowerment, one that can even deter the epidemic of campus rape. And last, if you wonder what the Muslim community in the United States is doing with regard to this presidential election, well, a major Muslim feminist leader is here to answer precisely that question. But first we need to go inside the headlines. If life survives on this planet for, say, another 1,000 years, sentient beings looking back at this period will likely see only one thing truly notable: that this was when human beings on the blue planet discovered proof that gravitational waves existed. For that matter, if life survives here for even another century, the big news in retrospect may well have been the British decision regarding the European Union. Needless to say, currently, such headlines didn't garner even as much attention as the firing of Corey Landowski, the much-loathed Donald Trump campaign manager who had even been charged with battery of a female reporter, among other charming acts, none of which pink-slipped him at the time. No, he was finally axed because Trump, of course, is now slipping and sliding in the polls and in trouble with everyone from the GOP leadership to his own kids, so Landowski was the convenient scapegoat. Don't expect Trump to change his spots, however, although he and his new team will certainly try to make it look that way. But more about the composition of Trump's staff and that of Hillary Rodham Clinton to come later in this program in, fittingly, the Surrealism Corner. For now, I have to return yet again, yes, I have to the subject of guns, relentlessly reminding myself and you that every 17 minutes someone in the United States dies again from gun violence, which again means that by the end of this program, again approximately 4 more Americans will have perished from firearms. As you know, because of the courageous filibuster of Connecticut Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, Senate Majority Leader Republican Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, who apparently suffers from loss of affect, was finally forced to bring 4 bills to the floor for a vote. These were the most tepid bills on the subject, but at least would have been a start. And although a handful of Republicans whose seats are vulnerable, Mark Kirk of Illinois and Kelly Ayotte of New Hampshire, joined the mass of Democrats who voted to pass these bills, still, the rest of the Republican majority defeated all 4. Did we really expect otherwise? Well, we hoped. Apparently, we have to teach them at the ballot box, teach them at the polls. These legislators know damned well that almost 90% of the American public wants far greater regulation and control over gun selling, buying, registration, and ownership, and that includes the majority of members of the National Rifle Association. The NRA, usually referred to reverently as a powerful lobbying group, is in fact the lobbying group for the gun manufacturing industry. Just that. No other industry, no matter how influential or formidable, not the auto industry, not the coal or tobacco industries at the height of their power, not the oil industry, for God's sake, not even the financial industry comprised of Wall Street and the banks, no other industry in the history of this country has had lobbyists that so successfully controlled one party in Congress as the NRA has, becoming, in effect, a shadow government. Nor is this likely to change with the current cast of characters, which means we have to teach them at the ballot box, teach them at the polls. It might stiffen our resolve to remember that more Americans have died from guns, including suicides, just since 1970 than have died in all the wars in U.S. history back to the American Revolution combined. More preschoolers up through age 4 are shot dead each year than police officers are. You can't buy lawn darts or fireworks because these have been banned as dangerous. You can't drive a car that hasn't passed a safety inspection or lacks insurance. You can't buy a water pistol that's black and doesn't have an orange tip to signify it's a toy. But you can buy a military assault rifle built for combat, and you can do so without even a background check. This is the result of bought-off legislators cowering to the NRA, which in turn doesn't even listen to its own membership, only to the gun manufacturers' representatives sitting on its board. Which means that those legislators have to go, because they will listen and learn only one way. We must teach them at the ballot box, teach them at the polls. And now for my first guest. Rita Dove returns to the program to my great pleasure. She is the former Poet Laureate of the United States. She was, in fact, the first African American to have been appointed since the position was created by an act of Congress in 1986. She's also the winner of a Pulitzer Prize, a National Humanities Medal, and the National Medal of Art. Here is Rita Dove, friend, poet, national treasure. Oh, Rita, it's good to have you back on the program.
Oh, it's really a delight, my delight.
Well, congratulations on the Collected Poems. Collected Poems, 1974 to 2004, shows this extraordinary talent and scope of that talent that covers 30 years, 7 books, has won gazillion awards, all of them deserved, and just congratulations. It's a treasure to have this book.
Oh, I'm so glad you think so. Thank you so much. It was a labor of both love and trepidation, I guess one could say, because to go back through 30 years stirs up a lot of stuff, let's put it that way.
Yes. And you, by scope, I mean, you are a poet of not only African American history on the personal level, but on the national level, and then of history of this country. It's your covering of the arts as well. I can't think of another poet, contemporary poet, who pays cross arts tribute as much as you do, to dance, to music. It's an extraordinary breadth of subject matter.
Well, I really firmly believe, Robin, that the arts are so an integral part of life. In fact, that for me, I feel like the arts are really just an expression of the days that we go through every day, every detail of the day, and so there is no separation. There is no ivory tower. Everything that touches us, that is meaningful to us, is something that I think is worthy of a poem, and so I try to write as many as I can.
Well, it works. And the musicality, I remember the last time that you were on the program, we talked about the fact that you were a classically trained musician, and you had originally played, I think, was it the violin and the viola da gamba, or the cello? The cello and the viola da gamba.
That's correct. Yes.
But that didn't stop you from moving into singing and into jazz and so you grew up with this kind of musicality, and it's very clear in your voice as a poet as well. And without any of the pretentious, high arty, crap, frankly.
Well, thank you. I always was astonished especially when I was poet laureate, and I would get letters from people expressing both a love of poetry but also a fear of poetry, and I was always astonished by this fear that seemed to permeate so many people, and I realized that they were missing out on something quite wonderful if they could just get rid of this fear. And I've never felt that a poem should be a test.
Yes.
how erudite you are.
Exactly. What do we do to people in school that teaches them that poetry is this abstruse, unattainable, boring, dusty 19th century? We must turn them off almost intentionally.
It's a real sadness. I mean, I do think that our public educators are kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, because they've been put into the situation where they have to quantify knowledge and in order to prove their worth. And poetry is very slithery. All the arts are very slithery in that regard. So they avoid them, and I understand that. I mean, it's very hard to say this child has understood this poem. And in fact, from my own experience when I was growing up, if I loved a poem, I couldn't even talk about it. You know, I would be kind of speechless. So I do think that if there were a space again in our public education system where, for instance, a child could be, a whole classroom could be read a poem at the end of the day, and then just left to their own device and left to take those words echoing in their heads home with them. They did that from the time they were kindergartners. There would be no problem with it, with addressing poetry.
You're right.
In the later years.
You're absolutely right. Well, I mean, few laureates of this country, poet laureates, have done as much to quote unquote popularize, and I mean that in the best sense, make accessible, make welcoming poetry the way that you have. I also wanted to ask you about, the Collected reminded me that in one of the books there's this whole huge section on of sonnets and some other forms called Mother Love, which is based on the Persephone and Demeter myth, and and you write very tellingly in a short introduction about why you think that's so important. And I wanted to ask, this is an interesting pattern among women poets. Recently, Alicia Ostreicher was on the program, and we were talking about her Persephone and Demeter poems. Toy Derricotte has done them. Robin Cost Lewis, I think Rukeyser did. I have done them. Why do you think women poets? I think I know my answer, but I want to hear your answer. Why are we drawn to this subject matter?
Oh gosh, well, I think first of all, most of those Greek myths, as gnarly as they are really just, they're templates for trying to explain certain human actions. And then and the real interesting part is what's underneath that. We get the story. We understand that Persephone wandered off from the rest of the girls and was dragged underground by Hades, etc. But it's up to us to kind of look into that and say, well, why does that pull us? And as a mother, and particularly when I was writing those poems, as a fairly new mother, I began to understand that very, very strange position that women are put into because we are both daughters and mothers. And we get pulled both ways. And I wondered, I kept thinking, this Persephone was really... why did she wander off? I mean, this was always, and why did she stay that long? And why did she eat those
pomegranate seeds?
Pomegranate seeds that the Hades offered her. And I realized it went deeper than just merely, looking at it from the outside and saying, oh, child wanders off and gets kidnapped, but it's also a sense of wanting to go out in the world, and that the fact that as a mother or a parent, you cannot protect them from that in the end.
That's right.
That vulnerability was the thing that pulled me into the whole myth. And it was one of the reasons why I also chose sonnets mostly sonnets, to write about it, because a sonnet is such a traditional sense of love, and in most cases people tend to think of Shakespeare, and so male love. But I thought, no, this little gobbet of song, this little piece of song that a sonnet would be a wonderful vehicle to talk about the very complex love that a mother has for her daughter, and vice versa.
Yeah, and wow, do you ring the changes on it. Is it possible we have a tiny bit of time to read one of them, to share one of them with us? Please, please.
Sure. Okay, all right. It's really hard to choose. But I was thinking, since we were talking about music, I will read this poem called Golden oldie where we don't have either of it's very contemporary, okay?
Okay.
Okay, here it goes. Golden oldie. I made it home early, only to get stalled in the driveway, swaying at the wheel like a blind pianist caught in a tune meant for more than two hands playing. The words were easy, crooned by a young girl dying to feel alive, to discover a pain majestic enough to live by. I turned the air conditioning off, leaned back to float on a film of sweat, and listened to her sentiment. Baby, where did our love go? A lament I greedily took in, without a clue who my lover might be, or where to start looking.
Oh, lovely. Oh, listeners, the book is called Rita Dove's Collected Poems, 1974 to 2004. Thank you for this work, and thank you for coming back to us, and also especially for sharing a poem. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Robin. It was my pleasure.
It's time for a break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and if you've been depressed about the stupidity and sheer meanness and vituperation online, you will find this next segment, I think, pretty comforting. It's about a very creative use of technology. So stay tuned.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. Jessica Ladd, my next guest, is the founder and CEO of Sexual Health Innovations. Previously, she worked in the White House Office of National AIDS Policy as a public policy associate at the AIDS Institute and as a sexual health educator and researcher for a variety of organizations. She founded the Social Innovation Lab in Baltimore and a chapter of FemSex at Pomona College, and today she's here to talk about sexual health innovations and its special project, Callisto. Jessica, welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about what you founded, which is Sexual Health Innovations, and one of its projects, which is Callisto, which is just a dynamic tool for rape survivors and other folks. Take it away.
Sure. So Sexual Health Innovations is a nonprofit dedicated to creating technology to advance sexual health and well-being in the United States. Callisto is our main project, our main initiative, and its goal is really to help college sexual assault survivors through the really difficult process of healing post-assault and reporting if they wish to do so. And really trying to figure out how can we restructure this system so it's actually empowering for survivors, results in justice, and ultimately results in lower sexual assault overall. So the way that Callisto works is that student college survivors are able to go to their school-specific Callisto website where they can learn about reporting options, what they can do, what process to expect, and then they can take one of 3 actions related to reporting their assault online in the safety of their own home. They can report electronically directly to their school. They can decide to just fill out and save a time-stamped record of what happened to them, preserving evidence so that even if they don't want to report yet, they'll still have that going forward. Or they can decide to wait, but report if somebody else names the same assailant. And this last bit is really essential because about 90% of campus assaults are committed by repeat assailants. But right now, less than 10% are ever reported.
Right. Repeat offenders, 90%. Wow. And it's stunning when I think of the U2 effect. If somebody logs on and sees that somebody else has named an offender, that they have been afraid to name all this time. And I mean, it's like a technological consciousness raising group that affirms you're not alone.
Yes, exactly. And when we talked to so many survivors, the main reason why they did report was they wanted to protect their community. Mm-hmm. And the main reason why they beat themselves up and feel guilty if they don't report is worried that somebody might have done it again. So the hope is really to figure out how do we get out of this sort of no-win situation where a survivor either doesn't report and feels bad about it or reports and then nothing happens a lot of the time, and try to figure out how can we engineer this in a way that actually will result in positive circumstances if they do come forward, and it will help legitimize their experience. So if they're in a place where they don't really want to come forward unless they know it's a pattern, which a lot of survivors are in that place because it's a friend or a loved one or somebody who they might care about who assaulted them, right? Allows them to get that information.
And less than 10% ever report their assault to their school or to the police. I'm reading from your own materials. And on average, those who do report wait 11 months. 11 months. And since only 6% of sexual assaults reported to police end with the assailant spending even 1 day in prison, which means there's a 99% chance they'll get away with it. This means that there has been up till now practically no deterrent to sexual assault. And we can, with what you're doing, you're preventing conceivably 59% of assaults from ever even occurring just by halting repeat offenders early on. How long has this been going on, Callisto?
We launched on 2 pilot campuses in August. So we're just wrapping up our pilot year, and we'll be expanding beyond that to 3 to 7 additional campuses this August.
And how can people help to get their campus? Let's say I'm a student and there have been a lot of rapes on my campus and I know the women, but nobody's reporting it and I'm afraid, or maybe I'm one of the survivors. How can I get my campus on your list?
Sure. So there are 3 main actions you can take. You can go to the projectcallisto.org website and suggest your school, which means it'll flag for us that this is a school that maybe we should reach out to. Mm-hmm. You should also contact your school, ideally the Title IX coordinator, the vice president, the chancellor, somebody with some degree of authority to make this decision, and make them aware that you think that this is a campus that needs Callisto and why. We have also had survivors do public petitions of their campus. For example, just this week, a survivor at UT Austin, she wrote about her experience publicly for the first time, calling on her school's football coach to call the chancellor and insist on bringing Callisto to the school. She then started a Change.org petition that has over 1,000 signatures, and that just happened in the last week. So we do see, which has been really, really heart and validating to see that outpouring of support, particularly from current students and alumni, to bring this to campus.
Oh my God, this is so empowering. It not only helps the survivor survive, it helps her in some way triumph. I mean, it helps her, it gives her back her agency, and then she can help other women. This is just magical. You must be very proud. You should be very proud.
I am. That's a lot of the point, right? Is how do we create a system where if something terrible happened to me, at least some good can come out of it, right? Yes. How can we help people take what happened to them and use it to make it less likely that something happened to somebody else? Even if it's just storing the record. So even if a survivor just stores what happens to them and takes no further action, we take the aggregate anonymous data from those stored records and let schools know, hey, this is around the time of year that assaults can be occurring, or this is the type of demographic of the perpetrator that you need to focus in on. So you're helping inform prevention policies, even if you elect to not report. And you really want to sort of picture this as a tool that can help people take that step, which then leads to healing and better health outcomes for them as well.
Wow. And of course, Callisto itself, if I'm remembering right, is the name of a Greek mythology nymph who was raped by Zeus and turned into a bear. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. And then had a child of the rape, and they are supposedly in the constellations of the big bear and the little bear. Was that obviously intentional on your part?
Yes, it was, and that's exactly the story. My junior year of college, I was in a literature class, and we had to write a paper about sort of a figure and compare different pieces written on them. And I came across the story of Callisto, and I myself had been assaulted in college and felt some kinship to her story. So because reading her and her story made me feel less alone at a time when I really needed it, I wanted to name it after her. Sexual Health Innovations, our first project was around STD prevention and partner notification. It's called So You Can Know, and it helps people who have been diagnosed with STDs figure out how to notify their partners. And if they're not willing to notify them themselves, allows them to do it anonymously.
Excellent. So that's So They Can Know, and that's still ongoing.
It is, yeah. It should have about 120,000 unique users this year. We see more people coming back month after month just from Google search results. They're looking for this information, and they find us, and that's been really great to see.
You know, this is such an incredibly creative use of the technology and of the Internet. We spend so much time trying to figure out safe places online, and you have created one that works online and offline. Hats off to you, really. We should say again, it's Project Callisto. That's Project CALLISTO.org. And also you want to look into Sexual Health Innovations, all one word, .org. And we've been talking with Jessica Ladd. Jessica, thank you for this. Go on to create other fantastic things, but this in itself could transform the crisis, the epidemic of campus rape in this country.
Thank you so much.
And now it's time to pop into the surrealism corner. The presumptive nominee from the GOP to the presidency of the United States, this equal opportunity bigot, hates everybody, has received mostly indulgent coverage from electronic media. But the print press, has been waking up finally, and that's very encouraging. It started with the Washington Post, doing an expose on the fact that the money raised ostensibly for veterans by Trump was not making it to the veterans, and it also began to unlayer Trump University. Of course, for this, it earned his ire because he revoked their press credentials, which is something even Nixon didn't do at the height of Watergate. Anyway, the New York Times, of course, has been running a series of articles on his financial dealings and is preparing an even more in-depth expose. And today I want to talk about the Boston Globe, which has done an interesting expose on who pays whom in which campaign for what. The Globe analyzed the payroll for both Trump's campaign and Clinton's campaign for April, which was the most recent month with publicly available data. And the snapshot, they feel, provides clues as to how the aspiring Oval Office occupants might fill a White House team, and to what extent also they include people with diverse viewpoints in the inner workings of their organizations. So, the payroll differences and the numbers really do stand out dramatically. The men who work for Trump make about 35% more than the women, which is a greater disparity than the gender pay gap nationally. The women working for Clinton, who account for 53% of her total staff, that's very different. The women in Clinton's campaign, the highest paid employee was a woman, Jennifer Palmieri, the campaign's director of communications, and of the 15 highest paid employees, 8 were men and 7 were women. In fact, they even have a chief diversity officer in the campaign to ensure that the campaign staff reflects the way that America looks. So here are some interesting numbers by gender. In Trump's staff, there are 80 men and 31 women, and 2 unknown. Don't know what that means. He has a very small staff because, as we know, he tells us he consults his own brain, which is a very good brain. I won't comment on that further. I'll just let that lie there. Clinton's staff, which is, of course, much larger and nationwide and very efficient, by gender breakdown, is 313 men and 349 women. By ethnicity, Trump's staff is 92% European American, white, with 8 people of color. Whereas Clinton's staff by ethnicity is 402 European American and 170, almost not quite half, of color. Trump, by the way, has not only stated that, of course, as you know, he cherishes women, has suggested that although he favors equal pay for equal work, he questions the methods for determining whether the work is actually equal. To that, Clinton snapped, "Last time I checked, there's no discount for being a woman. Groceries," she said, "don't cost us less." Yeah, well, it's surreal. Time for another quick break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be back directly with a distinguished Muslim feminist leader who will tell us just what Muslim women and men are doing about registering for the election. Yeah.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again. The Women's Islamic Initiative in Spirituality and Equality, that's WISE for short, is a global program, a social network, and a grassroots social justice movement led by Muslim women. And the founder and executive director of WISE is Daisy Khan, who is the recipient of numerous awards, the Edinburgh Peace Award and the Clinton Global Initiative Commitment to Action Award, among others, and she returns to the program to my great pleasure. Daisy Khan. Daisy, welcome back to the program.
Oh, I'm so glad to be with you, Robin.
Well, especially now, I wanted your wonderful, sane, feminist Muslim voice. Let's start with addressing the orange psychopath called Donald Trump, who is trying to spread Islamophobia through the land. How are you at WISE, Women's Islamic Initiative in Spirituality and Equality? How do you get up every day and fight on? My God.
Well, Robin, I think we've become hardened at this now. We've become, it's almost like we expect this to happen because fear-mongering of Muslims always spikes during the election cycle. And we know from personal experience from the community center when there was midterm elections how the community center became, the Lower Manhattan Community Center became a wedge issue.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
right.
Every time there are elections, Muslims get thrown into the mix because whoever's running is conflating the actions of terrorists and scapegoating the ordinary American Muslim.
Right.
And so it's no wonder then there are all these spikes in hate crimes and, mosques being vandalized and kids being bullied and women's scarves being pulled and And those of us who are Muslims, watching this and realizing that we have a constitutional right to exercise our constitutional right. And I think what Muslims are doing now is that there's a huge galvanizing effect, like no other presidential candidate, to actually not abstain from the vote, because abstaining from the vote means giving in to the biggest and letting the biggest win.
Yes.
So I'm seeing like a mobilizing effect like I've never seen before. People are saying, I don't even know who I'm going to vote for, but all I know is I'm not going to vote for Trump.
Oh,
and
I would hope
And recently, just a couple of months ago, I attended a summit in Washington, D.C. That was organized by multiple national organizations, and I saw this spark this energy in the room of young people saying, I'm going to organize a phone bank, and another person is going to register to vote, and they're talking about, creating the mosques, which, right now it's Ramadan, so a lot of people go to mosques because we have these extended prayers that happen in the mosques right now, and
right.
and fast break in the evening. It's becoming a civic engagement center, a hub for that kind of activity, get out the vote activity. So it's having an opposite effect of what Trump is expecting, and I think what's happening is Muslim communities being forced to register and to really take action, and many do not realize that their vote actually counts because they have this sense of apathy, like, is my vote going to count? But I think a lot of civic groups are trying to explain to them that primaries are won by small margins. So so Muslims have actually focused on some of the states like Virginia, which are, contested states.
Exactly.
It just focus on those states and let's show you how your vote can win that state. And that's very empowering for Muslims.
That's right. I mean, in Gore Bush, Gore lost Florida by 700 some odd votes. I mean, and then
exactly,
and then of course the court decided, unfortunately. But so I was hoping you would say that, because it seems to me that I was hoping that there were massive voter registration drives going on in the Muslim community.
It's the same thing, Robin, as the Latino vote. People who have never voted in their lives, they never thought their vote counted. And all of a sudden, everybody's coming in, the younger generation is coming in and saying, no, you got to vote. Grandpa, dad, whoever has never voted in their life.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what's happening.
Let's also take a minute and just touch on the tragedy in Orlando in particular, since one of the things that's been driving me crazy is what I call the canaries in the mine, except miners listen to them, and the society usually doesn't listen to us, that men who act out violently, from George Zimmerman on through to the shooter in Orlando and so many others, have a history of domestic abuse and domestic violence, but the women aren't listened to. And of course, in the case of the Orlando shooter, the first wife left him because of such violence, and it seems to me the second wife was also terrified of him as well. So say, from the perspective of WISE, of the group that you founded, talk a little about that.
Yeah, we actually did a paper called Jihad Against Violence because we wanted to recapture the word. In 2008, WISE had created a council which was going to look primarily at women's issues, the issues that women face, honor killings, and the kinds of things that they face. And then we women came together in the room and said, why are we only focusing on just violence or women's rights? We need to focus on societal issues. So we actually decided that we were going to look at domestic violence and link that to violent extremism or terrorism.
Perfect.
And show what the link is between those two. And I think we're the only ones that have ever done that, to make a link between the two. And the link that we found was bad leadership, or authoritative, coercive leadership. Coercive leadership, which leads to, domination and my way and the highway kind of an attitude. And then a woman really does not have the capacity to really step out because it's so coercive. The leadership is so coercive. And we took it back to biblical times. We took it back to the Pharaoh, and we compared the Pharaoh to Sheba, and her Sheba's style was so conciliatory. She reached out to her enemies, and Pharaoh took all his people and drowned them into the sea. And that's we were showing that link, that we have to be cognizant of that, and that it all starts in the home. So we try to bring it back to the home, and that you have to be good leaders. A mother has to be the best of leader, and she has to be compassionate. The father has to be a good leader, because only good leaders, produce good children. So we don't know what was going on in this home. We don't know what contributed to this, but I find this extremely devastating, and it's all the more reason why the project that I spoke about last year, the Community Guide, which is meant to empower Muslims with this knowledge and to discredit the extremist narrative and to de-link the religion of Islam from the actions of terrorists. So what really hurt me was not the fact that he senselessly went and killed 50 people and slaughtered their lives. At the end, he tried to somehow create a veneer around himself as if he was a martyr.
Yeah.
And he used an Islamic theological tool by saying that he had taken, allegiance with Baghdadi as if Baghdadi was a prophet,
Yeah, exactly.
So all of this is false. These are false narratives, and they're all being promoted over the net. And that's why we decided to step in and educate people about this. I'm hoping that our community guide, which is no longer 200 pages, is 300 pages, will actually be used amongst families, like this young woman his wife may have leafed through this and realized, how can I take action? How can I step? Who can I call? Because a lot of these things that are happening, just like domestic violence victims, they don't really call anybody.
That's right.
It's, they don't step out. They don't know who to reach out to. So we have some mechanisms in this guide which show you how to deal with a child who may be getting influenced by extremists or who may be violent, in how to deal with anger and so on and so forth. So it's a very practical tool, but extremely informative for people to take action in their own communities.
This is really vital. Well, how can people get a hold of the community guide?
So we actually have not launched it officially because, Robin, we've been listening to everybody, and people have been asking us to put more information in this. For instance, there are issues with gangs and people join gangs, and there are issues with drugs and all these things that Muslim families cannot handle within their own families because they don't have the social mechanisms to handle with taboo issues. So we are, adding more information to this. So in a couple of months, most likely when the guide comes out, it will become available to the public, and I'm hoping I'll come on the show at that time and explain to people how to get involved, because we don't just see this as a Muslim issue, we see this as a societal issue, and we have to all work together. Muslims, non-Muslims together.
Really?
We have to engage communities,
yes.
and only then can we root out extremism from our communities. And I think the one thing that is really important for people to know is that the extremist mindset can be found in any faith tradition or in any ideology.
Oh my God, yes, it's a cult. It's a cult. It's cult mindset.
It's a cult.
Somebody was saying to me, Islam is homophobic. No, I said, have you looked at Leviticus lately? Have you looked at the Old Testament or the New Testament? Or these are interpretive texts, and if there was homophobia, why are you not addressing the homophobia in the Christian tradition
within your own?
Exactly. So, soon enough, some Baptist ministers came out, and they actually, for the first time in their lives, they were very fundamentalist, and for the first time in their lives, they found themselves approving of the act that this Muslim had done in Florida. It was so horrifying, and all I could think was, well, maybe they won't encourage bombing mosques, but probably they still will do that as well. It's a mindset.
And that is what we have actually highlighted in this, how that mindset works. And this mindset can be found anywhere. And that's why our guide becomes relevant to people beyond the Muslim community, because we're all fighting against extremism within our own communities. And so if we could create a tool for people to understand how that mindset works, we can root it out at the family level, because people, mothers and fathers and siblings are the first ones that see the change in a person's behavior.
Of course.
And they are the ones that can actually stop it, and they're the ones that can influence that person.
You do such good work, Daisy, against really awful odds, really hard odds. But we're going to win. We're going to get through this. Somehow we're going to get through this. Listeners, the website is wisemuslimwomen.org. It stands for Women's Islamic Initiative on Spirituality and Equality. While you're getting terribly excited over the possibility of the first woman president of the United States, you should know, listeners, that 5 heads of state who have been Muslim women have already happened in Pakistan, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Mali, and Senegal. So the U.S. is...
And Kosovo.
That's right. 6. Yes. Yes, you're quite right. So we're lagging in the rear. So much for those, quote, uncivilized Muslims, unquote. Oh, my God. We wouldn't even have the fork if it weren't for Muslims.
I didn't know about that.
During the Crusades, Eleanor of Aquitaine rode on the Crusades and went to the Middle East and came back with a fork. Before then, everybody in Europe was eating with the knives in their hands. I mean, we wouldn't have mathematics, and we wouldn't have the fork, and we wouldn't have you. So thank you, Daisy. Thanks for all the work you do, and do come back in the fall and tell us more about the guide, because it seems like
and how people can get involved. That's what we would really like. We would like people to get involved.
Would be so important. Thank you so much, and take care of yourself.
Thank you so much, Robin.
And now for our new little feature, We Told You So. Periodically, messages that feminists have been sending for decades suddenly are considered worthy of a study by academics who then validate it, and then everybody falls over sideways saying, oh my goodness, this is a new finding. And it's, on the one hand, heartening because we're being validated. On the other hand, it's maddening because it takes so bloody long. So the New York Times, and a front page article, and the New Yorker, and a number of other news publications covered this new finding by the research and advocacy group Everytown for Gun Safety, which found the link between domestic violence and mass killings, quote, noteworthy. Using the FBI's definition of mass shootings as incidents in which 4 or more people are murdered by guns, the Everytown researchers documented 133 such shootings between January of 2009 and July of 2015, and they found that in at least 76 of the cases, that's 57%, the shooter killed a current or former spouse or intimate partner or other family member, and in at least 21 incidents the shooter had a prior domestic violence charged. This ranges all the way from Cedric Ford, who shot 17 people at his Kansas workplace, killing 3 only 90 minutes after being served with a restraining order sought by his ex-girlfriend, who said he had abused her, straight through to the killer in Orlando. It covers Sung-Hyu Cho, the perpetrator of the killings at Virginia Tech. He was charged with stalking female students beforehand. The Boston Marathon bomber, Tamerlane Tsarnaev, had been arrested for battery of a woman and for domestic assault. It just goes on. And of course, George Zimmerman, who's abusing women to this day. Now, my point is, we've been saying this for a long time. In 1989, when my book, The Demon Lover, The Roots of Terrorism, came out, that book basically is about precisely this. 1989. Why does it take so long? We're telling you this. We told you this. We're glad you're finally listening. But wow, let's make it a shorter period before you hear. Time for one last break here at Women's Media Center Live, but I'm Robin Morgan, who will be back in just a moment with some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again to some fighting words. Nuance-free political purists give me indigestion, because the work of transforming society is slow, imperfect, incremental, and unglamorous. For instance, I find people who deplore globalization as evil per se irritating, because without it, those of you in China or Egypt right now wouldn't be able to hear these very words. People who naively denounce technology or uncritically worship it do so to make themselves feel pure or smart, but they do not make actual social change happen. Doing that requires a willingness to be open to new tools and tactics as soon as they present themselves, or as soon as one can invent them. Jessica Ladd, interviewed earlier in this episode, is a good example of someone doing this. Here are two more examples of the women's movement using technology in progressive, witty, much-needed ways to protect and advance a woman's basic right to control her reproductive life. On Tuesday, June 21st, at 10 a.m., the first abortion drone flew abortion pills from Ireland to Northern Ireland, where abortion is illegal except for the life of the woman under very limited circumstances, and where women who manage to travel abroad to abort face the high probability of life imprisonment on their return. In the Republic of Ireland, abortion is also illegal, forcing thousands of women to travel abroad for the procedure, but at least without facing prison on their return home. The United Nations Committee on Human Rights found Ireland's abortion laws in violation of a woman's basic human rights. But in Ireland itself, the Republic that is, it is nonetheless not illegal to supply or procure, quote, authorized medication, close quote. Now, meanwhile, although the United Kingdom's Legalization of Abortion Act in 1967 does not, unfortunately, extend to Northern Ireland, UK laws concerning e-health, that is, electronic health matters, do apply those laws in Northern Ireland. Now, you get the picture? The drones contain legal electronic prescriptions from registered doctors with the medicines. The person receiving the drone is importing the medicines mifepristone and misoprostol for personal use, as allowed under UK legislation. Furthermore, since the abortion drone is not used for any commercial purposes and doesn't fly in controlled airspace, no authorization is required under UK or Irish law. Brilliant. The abortion drone is a collaborative effort between four groups: the Alliance for Choice, the Labor Alternative, ROSA, and Women on Waves. The terrific organizers from Women on Waves and Women Online have been on this program more than once, and you can get the full story by going to their website, womenonwaves.org. Now, another instance of modernizing our tactics is a growing assortment right here in the United States of new apps and websites which make it possible to get prescription contraceptives without a doctor's visit. These have so far sprung up under the political radar of anti-choice fanatics. At least 6 digital ventures by private companies and nonprofits now provide prescriptions written by clinicians after women answer questions about their health online or by video. All of them prescribe birth control pills, and some prescribe patches, rings, and the morning after pill, and some ship contraceptives directly to the women. Some accept insurance, including Medicaid for women with low incomes. Some charge modest fees. Some send prescriptions to local drugstores where women can then present their insurance when picking up the medication. 40% of all pregnancies in the United States are unintended. So birth control is still a critical public issue. And, for a teenager, visiting a doctor for a prescription can be embarrassing or scary or just impossible. For poor women, access can be difficult and costly. Every effort to eliminate such undue burdens on a woman's right, including the Affordable Care Act's requirement that all health plans pay for prescription birth control, every effort has been met with right-wing opposition. Now this may well be the way around that. One of the companies is named Nurx, that's N like Nancy, N-U-R-X. Another is VirtuWell, V-I-R-T-U-W-E-L-L. Another Lemonade, all one word with A-I-D as spelling aid. Doubtless the most reliable is Planned Parenthood. Their app, Planned Parenthood Care, requires video visits with doctors or nurse practitioners and currently serves Hawaii, Idaho, Minnesota, Washington State, and Alaska, where women in remote locations get the contraceptives delivered by float plane. Planned Parenthood Direct, a non-video version that sends prescriptions to women's pharmacies, recently began in California. These are models of women creatively and affirmatively adopting 21st century tools as empowering solutions to age-old, disempowering oppressions. That is literally forward thinking. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter and be sure to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMCLive.com. There you can find the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes. And we're at iTunes worldwide. There you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Regina K. Scully is our founding sponsor. Julie Burton, Women's Media Center President, is executive producer. And I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.